So you worked at Adobe for a long time, I think over 8 years, a very established, mature company, very
Um,
stable, and you dove into the world of startups. And what has that experience been like? Can we compare between the two where someone out there is thinking like, should I join a startup or join a more established
mhm,
company, especially
mhm.
early on in their career? Like let's say they're thinking about these kind of choices coming right out of school or and
Yeah.
they're looking for their first job transition. They're thinking, should I do a startup or should I join a more established company? How do you recommend people make that decision?
Yeah, I definitely like to encourage people to try startups. At least people got to be able to experience in person. And then after that, they will know whether they like or they don't like. Because it's clearly very different from the experience from big companies.
Do you think there are any cons to joining a startup? Like, what should people be aware of if they decide to go the startup route? You kind of talked about this a bit already by talking about the
Yeah.
stability, but
Yeah.
anything else that you think of?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit of like my experience of how a startup different from a big company. So like usually one of the most important thing is in big company, the business model is relatively stable. So the company continues to get revenue annually, right? But in a startup, usually it's a process, especially for early stage startup. Usually, they're trying hard to explore and build a business model and validate that whether that business model is a good one, or okay one, or actually is not possible. So that they're in a like stage, they're trying to explore and validate. And later stage startup, they're trying to scale. Scale means from a relatively flattening org structure to start to build different departments, build different organizations. So that's like usually what happens. But in big company, everything is relatively established, but there's always like new things happen and or incubation, innovation happen in big companies. But in majority part of the big company, people would imagine like a lot of things are established, so the innovation is built on top of what they already have. So that's on a high level, that's how things differ. And yeah, if people are interested, they can read some startup tutorial online or check out some slides from business schools. So that's how things work in general. And then in terms of engineer, I guess in big company, like the process is relatively mature. When you get into a team, it's highly likely that the entire team, or at least some of the team members, are working on the same area with you. So you're not alone. You ask some people to onboard you, and you have like people working in different roles. They work with you, such as product managers, designers, or if you're in a research role, there's other researchers in other areas. So relatively well structured. So you might find it's easy to get onboarded, but I'm just saying in general, in terms of each individual case, there could be a lot of differences and everyone is unique. So like when I was in Adobe, we work on emerging product, which is a relatively, I would say it's a work of incubation. So we take on more scope than majority of the mature product team. So we take on relatively small scale team. We take on iOS, Android, and end-to-end machine learning development, DevOps, release. So we take on almost everything from 0 to 1. So that I consider a little bit similar to startup, in between of startup and big company. But when I landed at a real startup, I found that, yeah, it's similar in that sense. You need to take care of everything. And at the meantime, it's relatively a small team. So you almost know everybody in a startup. And potentially you're going to work together. And the role is not as clear as roles in big company. So you can work on a lot of things you talk to people and figure out, okay, there's some gap and nobody work on that, then you might potentially work on that. So there's definitely more flexibility in that sense in a startup. Another thing I think is interesting to find out is like in big companies, usually there's a lot of Rs and different roles, and they support you. So when you are there, you might feel like you might not be able to feel like they're supporting you. But when you landed in startups, you found, oh, where's my HR supporter? Or you still have them. If you ask, well, oh, where is people going to onboard me? So the process will all be simplified in the startup world. Maybe like in a big company, one HR just support you, but in startup, one HR may support so many people. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of interesting differences.
If you enjoyed this clip, make sure you watch the entire video, which has a lot more content just like this. And if you want to make sure you don't miss any of our episodes where we talk to leaders in the tech industry, from software engineers to product managers to engineering managers, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and also click the notification bell.